Hey, welcome to This Life in Tech, episode 176. I am Jason.
I'm Dan.
And I am.
Fuck. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, dude, we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. There's no fuckery. And then the person I least expected.
Yeah, you actually need a fisheye lens or a walleye lens if you're going to go from hot shots, so that the mustache can be huge and everything else can just be shedded in the back behind it.
Oh.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Fantabulous.
I am doing well.
I got all of my results from Dr. Rhonda.
Oh yeah, how'd that go?
Yeah, pretty interesting overall. I mean, in terms of like some of the stuff that I did kind of know. Like I have a family history of colon cancer, and it shows right up in the DNA. Like, hey, you have your family history is this, so you need to make sure you're doing these things. What the different kind of things that I need to put my diet, make sure it's into my diet quite a bit. How often I should be doing eating windows, and then fasting in order to help with those things. It's pretty fascinating. And then of course they say, look, these are just the things that we're saying. What you need to do next, which is what I liked, is get these tests run in order to validate.
Right.
So,
Dan, you'll
be a part of my next physical.
Well, you guys both know it's like my hobby is that doing that kind of stuff. And I had gotten really detailed blood work, a lot more detailed than you normally get when you get a physical, in breaking everything down. Right. Mm-hmm. Cholesterol, it's not just HDL, LDL total. There's a whole bunch of necrotic factors that play to this. And so I had done something similar, taking my DNA and giving it to a GenoPalette, which is just another one of these services like that. And genetically, for example, it said I'm really predisposed to be deficient in vitamin D. Well, that totally coincided with my lab work that says, hey, you're really deficient in vitamin D. And so for me, it was almost like a true scientific thing. Something separated by time and distance. A doesn't know B and B doesn't know A, but yet they come up with the same answers through a different methodology. Right. And so it's given me a lot more confidence in both of those methods of telling you what you need, right? The genetic. And I think this, for those folks out there that I did 23andMe, whether you do Ancestry or whatever, but what they're finding out information DNA can provide is changing literally daily. And services like 23andMe in particular, they're very proactive about saying, hey, we found 4 new tests that we can do. Here's 4 new things. And I like Dr. Rhonda, reading her stuff, and I dig what she has to say. But I think that's really the future. If for no other reason than there's no real doctors are not required to talk about the link between nutrition and food and the human body. Right? In fact, the AMA threw a big fit this year when they tried. It was proposed that they include 8 hours of CEUs on nutrition, right? And we all have the same parts, but they all function differently. And I think because of that, you can't take this, one size fits all approach to health. And I think folks out there doing stuff with their DNA or getting exhaustive blood work. I like I said, I've used Cleveland Clinic before. There's other places out there that are really good. I mean, you're saying, hey, I want to have control over who I am and what I do a little bit more than just walking in once a year and looking for an easy button.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, I think if I were more heavily involved, like on the research side of this, or even on the business side, one of the things I'd be thinking about, which I think is a natural evolution to what we're experiencing right now, is part of the burden of the system is it's very snapshot driven, right? You go in, get blood drawn, bank of tests are ran against it, you get results. 6 months later, maybe, right? For most people, most frequently, if not annually, you repeat that and you get this evolving snapshot, right? And then you're trying to establish a trend over time, right? What we've seen from anti-doping the evolution of that science is the concept of a biopassport, where your blood samples are frozen for a long period of time. And as the technology evolves, new tests are gone back and run against old samples. And it's completely possible, particularly as the fidelity of the instruments increases and you need smaller blood samples to run more granular tests instead of more blood, you know what I mean?
Right.
I see that as a big innovation just for general public health,
But I'll tell you what, though, I had an experience with this, with the precursor to the in-device heart monitor on an Apple Watch, for example, was a band called LiveCore. And it was the first basically clinical tool that was approved by the FDA to possibly detect anomalies like AFib. Right. And so you would get it and I was battling AFib at the time. And so I'd gotten the band and I said to my cardiologist, who's a very forward-thinking electrophysical cardiologist. And I said, why can't I just, when this happens, why can't I just send you a snapshot from the watch? Because the watch had the capability to do it, or the app had the capability to
Right.
the data. And he's like, this is the hospital group, hasn't figured out the data piece. What's the privacy of the data and the fidelity of how they store that, and more importantly, how much of that data? What's the quantity of that data on scale?
Right.
They're still battling that. When I went in there, he would want to look at my watch and go, okay, when this happened, he would go back and say, okay, here's where it's running. Okay, here's what you're doing now, and he hooked me up to a proper EKG, and they would mirror each other. Right? But he wasn't comfortable personally or professionally saying, yeah, just, email this little brick of data over. Yeah, it's only 5 kilobytes, but 5 kilobytes times everybody that has this problem in America. Now we have a data management problem.
Right. Well, and I think the nice thing about this too, this is a good segue into the privacy assistant. So
see what I did there?
Yeah.
Every now and again, once in a while I show up and I'm like, boom, on it.
It worked.
Today's it. Count me out for the next few weeks, by the way.
Well, now just to see how quickly I can derail it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. But it's actually a legitimate thing. Think about even, so like I have a predisposition to heart tissue infarction. And so that there's a genetic marker for that gets expressed in a protein. So if there's a certain volume of this free-floating protein in your blood serum, that indicates that problem is accreting enough levels to start causing damage to the heart tissue, to the muscle. And so that test exists, but I'm only getting it every so often. And it's only, the big part to me too is not only is it every so often, fair enough, okay? I mean, it's like getting your oil checked in your car. You only check it when you pull the dipstick, right? But it's relatively
not in my Mercedes. They got sensors that constantly keep checking it. So
we'll have a whole show dedicated to why you chose to drive a Persian car instead of a true German car like a BMW.
It was a very simple answer. It was the only one that out of the two that had the remote start. The BMW didn't have it.
Hashtag first world problem.
Yeah, right. How about aftermarket?
Hashtag niche.
So I talked to my colleague Kate, who works at Ford Motor Company, is responsible for the F-150. She said, putting in an aftermarket, you're going to wind up destroying the electrical systems inside the car very quickly. They're not. All right.
So this quickly turned, and you're trusting the opinion of somebody that works at Ford. Why?
Well, so she also used to work for BMW.
Ford don't have
it. I'll tell you what, though, man. Listen, we've been talking about a pickup truck for the farm, and the little Ford Ranger. Holy shit! That thing gets better gas mileage than my BMW 3 Series. I shit you not.
Yeah.
I have a Toyota Tacoma, the small version, and people say that it's supposed to get like 17 miles a gallon. I get 23, 24. I mean, maybe I just don't drive like a crackhead, but it's because I thought about getting a full size truck, and I'm like, why do I need one?
No, right. All except for the Nissan Frontier, because they haven't updated it in a while. All like the last couple 2-3 years.
Mid-size truck.
Yeah, they're great. They're actually really good.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when you're not having to do like big, huge construction where you're having to haul all this crap,
Right.
you don't need a full size truck. If you're like, you've got, the personal, vegetable garden type thing like Jason's growing and stuff like that, you just, how much you're really going to be able to do in a day. I mean, imagine if you were going to go get firewood and you that's a lot of firewood you're putting in that like Ford Ranger. It's a ton of firewood.
Yeah, dude, totally. Anyway, back to privacy assistance.
Yeah, I was able to derail that pretty quick.
Well, we'll bring it back. We'll see where it goes. So it's a snapshot, but it's only analyzed in a lot of cases within it itself, right, as a snapshot. And if you had the ability to say, okay, look, here's this blood sample. I'm going to apply this test to it, and I'm going to apply this version of the test that I'm applying retroactively to all, let's say all, or even the last 4, right, rolling samples. To me, that's a good, solid trend, because what I think sometimes what gets lost is as the technology that's the test evolves, right? It's not the same instrumentation, which is a problem scientifically.
Right.
Well, right. Well, it's following, data modeling science, data science, right? You're going back and now you're doing, regression testing.
In some ways, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that makes perfect sense.
So then how do you manage the privacy of it? And so that's where at least it's compelling technology from Carnegie Mellon.
Outsource it to China.
What? Like everything? I mean,
yeah.
You have this agent that can evolve with you over time to help manage that. And maybe that's the right answer, right? Maybe the answer isn't for, let's say, the medical industry to figure out how to manage that problem. Maybe this is one of the classic examples of a private-public partnership where, hey, look, man, I know how to build technology. Let me help you build this agent that's mine, but works on my behalf in your system. You know what I mean?
I also think, as we move, like probably the next 20, 30 years, that, the concept of RPM, remote patient management and monitoring to keep you out of the hospital. Mm-hmm. Right? Really, the ultimate goal is how can I cut down the number of times I got a personal interaction that's a really high touch, high cost event. How can I do that and do it securely? It's one of the things that for folks out there, like when what's his name was vice president and had he had a patient Cheney. The first thing he did when he got rid of it was go to Mayo Clinic, have the Bluetooth controlled one taken out, and have one that was a little, more privacy oriented, right? Because, people rightfully so said, hey, what if somebody wanted to kill the VP? Well, he's got a Bluetooth device that manages his heart. That's the weak link as far as I'm concerned, with a lot of other people, right? So how do we take all the advances in medicine that we have, that we can put instrumentation or put things into people to keep them healthier, to monitor their health, and like you said, and have consistent monitoring, so it's not a snapshot, right? And do it securely. Well, the big problem with all this, and it's just from friends of mine that are the chief data officers of states as well as medical companies, and okay, how are we going to warehouse this data? A lot of the answers that they're looking at now is it could treat it like any other IoT device and put a cert on it. Mm-hmm. Right? Start with that and make that part of a larger network of things. But I think that hospital groups, and a lot of this is the byproduct of how ACA is written, that if building a new hospital or building a new clinic is considered to be spending money on patient care, that those dollars, it's easy to transfer those dollars, but is that something that, because it's not something tangible you can see, hey, can I take some of that money and it be considered patient care if we learn or we build a system that effectively warehouses that data? And for the volume, because I think it's an unknown right now, it's best to put it in the cloud and let the elasticity of the cloud help you figure out in on the macro how we're going to manage this data set.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a friend that was a storage engineer for LA County Hospital, man. And I rode the train with this dude probably for several years. And I talked to him every morning, man. And every morning it was nothing but problems, problems.
I know. That's like the worst job in the world is to be the data guy.
Yeah. I mean, this dude would beg me to teach him how to program because he was tired of being a storage engineer.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we're not talking about being like a data scientist. We're talking about basically the SQL administrator for the most part, and that's just not
Oh yeah.
on top of the floor, on top of the sand, having to deal, more than one disk going out at a time.
Oh, constantly, dude, constantly. Every time I talk to this guy, almost every day for weeks on end, for years, it was something on the order of either the software from EMC had a bug that was causing a problem, or he had disks failing and LUNs, and it was just endless bullshit. Endless.
Well, and when you start thinking about, like, when you're bringing up, Dick Cheney, whenever we have any of this type of, privacy data or medical device, they're not going to, readily make this stuff available to, say, like a HackerOne or a Bug Crowd to have some people pound away on it. There's the conspiracy theorists that believe that Barnaby Jack, he didn't have an accidental overdose. His research was in hacking pacemakers, and then in 2013, right before DEF CON, he's going to release something, he ODs. Just these medical companies aren't going to just release this stuff.
Well, I think so if you start talking in this vein of the like personal privacy assistance, and from the article you sent over, Jason, when you look at it, it's the age-old problem, right? Here's a tool that can help you, but that tool also has to collect certain information about what's going on in your device,
Right.
which is an extension of everything else that's going on in your life. So how are we managing that tool to give us the information we want, but be a good steward of the information to the rest of the world? Right? Exactly. And when you say, hey, now you put it into healthcare, for example, right? And we can define healthcare however you like, whether you trend more like I do, it's like, hey, I want to do everything I can do to not take pills, or hey, I've got physical limitations, I've got to take this pill, because there are great medicines out there. I'm not anti-medicine, anti-vaxxer. I'm just saying let's do everything you can do first to try to fix it, and then after that, let's let modern medicine and science help us out. Right. And as roughly 78% of the people don't do that in the U.S., as evidenced by their weight alone. And but now you start saying to the healthcare companies, ignore, right? As the CEO of the company, if it's not job one, it's job 1A, to manage and grow shareholder value, right? And how do I do that, right? I do that by creating patients, right? By creating customers, and pharmaceuticals are a big part of that customer creation. We don't want to cure HIV or AIDS. We've made it chronic, right? The new medicines today are amazing, right? But it's not about saying, hey, boom, you got vaccinated, you can't get it anymore, right? It's about saying, hey, if you do get it, right, here's how we're going to manage it so that you can go die of diabetes or some other malady that we thought, that HIV is not a death sentence like it used to be, right? So as you get into that, how do we keep people's data safe? And some of this is legislation, right? If you say, hey, we can't insure you because of pre-existing conditions, go legislate that you have to accept pre-existing conditions to be a health insurance company and make the gargantuan money that you make. Right? Period. Right? It's not like this isn't, and that's not the be all to end all in the system, right? But because think about what do you think the max, and what do you think the max with employer contribution and employee contribution, the max for what they would call a platinum or a Cadillac healthcare plan, what do you think the max contribution in premium/deductibles is for any one individual?
For the deductible?
For contributions to pay for healthcare, like how much does your employer chip in? How much do you have to chip in a month? I mean, what's your basic premium a month? And then with deductibles and copays and everything, what do you think that total cost between employer and employee contribution is to an insurance company to ensure that you have high quality healthcare? What do you think the max number is at on a year, on average?
$10,000.
Yeah. Maybe I'm even going to say, I would even go as high as say 25 grand. And that's because I want to make a point, right?
Right.
So if we look back to 2008 and ACA, one of the big, here's why we want to do this moments was I think the president said, hey, there are 45 million uninsured Americans. We want to make sure that they can get insurance. Right? To me, that's rhetoric, because what you're really saying is we've got a lot of Americans that are underinsured, right? That can't go get all of the preventative care that we give people. What we're finding out recently is a lot of people haven't been going to the doctors, but a lot of people aren't falling apart either because they're in a controlled environment now, locked in their house. They're making better decisions because they have to, right?
Right.
Even if you say $25,000 per man, woman, and child, 350 million people that live in the U.S. If you just gave, let's say, $500,000 per citizen to the insurance companies and say, this is the premium for the year, deal with it. And you're going to provide everything high quality healthcare because here's what you've been getting previously. We're going to get the government out of healthcare largely, right? Because it's not a government function, but we are going to indemnify it with oversight. And this is going to be price locked in for X amount of years. And then we're going to go up. Now you're removing a layer of management, which is one of the reasons that I think ACA is really not helped the healthcare system, because we just added another layer of management because the healthcare industry wasn't going away. You say, hey, everybody's taken care of, and here it is. It's orders of magnitude cheaper than the 14% of the GDP that we've co-opted to deal with healthcare, right? Mm-hmm. But why can't we do that, right? Because it's a political and there's more money to be had in the seams than to give up straight and go, hey, here you go. Right? Because it's a shell game. Nobody knows really. It's like when you go into like Joseph A. Banks is a clothing store. They're brilliant. Do you actually know when you go in, there's always some sale going on. Oh, buy two, do this, right? When you walk out of there, do you know how much you actually paid for any one item? No, brilliant. I just feel I got a good deal.
Yeah. Well, it's very much they very much adopted the car sales route, right? When you buy a car. I haven't bought a car this way in a long time, but I remember buying a car and they just scribble a bunch of shit on a piece of paper and you have no idea what that is.
Yeah. And so bunch of letters, acronyms, right? I went in there and I bought 3 sport coats one time. Mm-hmm. If I'd have bought it according to the price tag, I'd have paid $1,500.
Right.
I walked out of there at like less than $400.
Yeah, right.
Feeling like I got a great deal. I don't know if it was a good deal or not.
Well, I mean, it's a good deal. See, this is the interesting thing, real quick. If you feel like it's a good deal, then it is a good deal.
Right. That's the concept of value, right?
Exactly.
That's why we don't talk about price anymore. And if you're modern sales, we don't talk about price. We talk about value.
You're right. And so that's your emotional coupling to that event and those articles. If we stand back as reasonable, intelligent people and we analyze the business side of it, I mean, what's it cost to produce those sport coats? Let's be generous and say it's $100 in labor and material. Just for a number, right?
To get it into the store.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then add the overhead of the store, the salesperson, whatever, right? I mean, it's also a good value for the company.
Right.
When there's parity in those two things, I think that's a good system. And I think that's kind of, at least in my view and argument, what we lack in the management of our data and what, to me, at least is compelling about the idea of some type of privacy assistant. So that's kind of my idea. Dan, you were going to say.
Well, it's absolutely right, because in any of these cases, the inventory turnover they need that to be fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They don't need it to quite be as fast as Walmart, but they need it to be not as slow as maybe a John Deere tractor, right? So in order to be able to do this, another model that's just like this is Naked Wines.
Yeah.
You pay, you're donating $40 a month. Unless you use it. If you don't use it, it's going to some artisan winemaker or something like that. But if you do happen to use it, you get a free bottle of wine that's randomly picked, and they take $40 off your bill. And then trying to figure out, because someone had, said, hey, this is a good business model or and I'm like, sounds more like a marketing model to me. And,
right.
Which
exactly.
We don't know. I don't know yet if this is a good business model. It might be, but for me to take a look at it, like now it's now I want to get into it, because that $40 is a is a prepaid dollar amount, which is not recognized as revenue until after the end of the month. And so I'm going, what happens here? So it's kind of like a gift card. Gift card has an expiration date, but you can't recognize this revenue. It's cash flow. And while cash matters, what also matters is the revenue recognition.
Right. And it comes back to what quarter can I recognize that revenue? And as long as you know that, you're not, and the thing, you're not worried about redemption, right? At that point, right? Where you're going to have to, the whole reason for that model, that gap model, is in case you have to redeem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're not really, how many people redeem a gift card? How many people don't lose a gift card? Right. I'd like to know what that is. Right. But it's, when you talk about, and I think it's the same when you're selling these big ideas, right? That's a marketing effort. And you're saying, hey, we've got this personal assistant is great. Here's how we're going to manage the data. Right. In the old days of, sales/marketing, you used to use the 4 Ps, right? Product, place, price, promotion. Right? I like the save model. We don't have a price, we have a solution. Because when you're talking to people, when people come in to sell you on any kind of security stuff, if they even remotely have thought about what your problem is and are offering you what they believe to be a solution, even if it's not direct, you're more likely to direct them in the right path to say, hey, if it looks like this, we're more inclined to buy. Or somebody comes in and they're picking because ultimately, anything you sell, I'm buying something to solve a problem. I buy food because my problem is I'm hungry.
Right.
Right. And I want to solve that problem. Right. We don't have a place, especially in software. So we don't have a place or medicine. Right. We're trying to move people away from going to brick and mortar. We're trying to be able to do things more remotely. And all these sensors that great companies are coming out with to put on your wrist, to put around your chest, do whatever, they're helping in that. We have access, right? We're providing you a solution. We give you access, and we don't have a price. Because if you're running price, you're basically in a race to the bottom with all your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Oh yeah. Right. We saw this with MDM.
Right.
So mobile device management software, which was hilarious.
If you just look, Dan, you and I talked about this at length. What people paid for MDMs in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, it was an immense price, and now, Microsoft / even to a certain extent Knox are giving it away, right? And with the Knox model, it's about content management, right? Is really where they're making their money. It's not about the bucket itself, right? So Apple does this great, right? People will ignore a price fluctuation that's detrimental to them if they feel they're getting value, right? And in Apple's case, the mantra has always been whether, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't even have to be true, but if people believe, hey, Apple just works, it's seamless. I take a picture on my phone, it shows up on my iPad, my computer, and my life is great, right? And then we don't have promotion / marketing anymore. We have education. Because an educated customer is my best salesperson, right? And I think in any walk of life, if we start and we focus less on what things cost and more on how we're solving people's problems, that's when the solution becomes the thing we're driving at, and not a baseline of. And it's a question of, am I going to be a product-driven company? And I think it's a false argument, by the way, what I'm going to say. Am I going to be a product-driven company, or am I going to be a sales-driven company? If you're not a product-driven company, being a sales-driven company does not matter, period. Right? Because you're not going to, your product officers, for example, aren't going to be able to defend the mission of the company against the whims of quarterly revenue decisions or changes, right? And you get a CEO or an executive team that's lacking in long-term thought, because they want to think. The first thing that's going to happen is every quarter they're going to jump to something else, and then you're going to start getting beat because your product set sucks, because you've languished, because you're like, hey, I got to get these sales numbers, and that's when it's going to be the other way around. And I think when you start talking about the technology piece of healthcare, is the big nut is going to be how we store all this data and do it securely.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting to me about it too, and this is where I start thinking about, and from my view of privacy, right, especially not today, but in the future, far future even,
Right.
there needs to be a duality to the data where I need my data to be my data on demand and identifiable, coupled to me from my personal healthcare with my physician or my set of physicians. But there also is a social need where my data is with your data and everybody else's data abstracted out into just this, let's say, cardiac trends.
Right.
Right? Where it's not uniquely identifiable to anybody. It's nothing other than cardiac data. That's the best you can possibly say about it.
How do we create a system that has like a wall? On one half, I get all the detailed personal information I need. On the other half, I can be a good steward of humanity and give you anonymized data to help make us all better.
Yeah,
put it on the blockchain.
Actually, you're not that wrong. And so, what's interesting about this, and
okay, he's not wrong, but the haphazard way he just says that is like, you're lucky you're in Indiana. I can't reach over and speak. Dude, like just keep talking. Come on, keep walking, Cliff. Come on.
If only the force were really real, you could be force choked. Well, in some ways, we know how to solve it. The answer is in it already. Like on a small scale, we know how to do single blind and double blind research, where identities are abstracted out so that participants can't be identified. And so in a small scale, we know how to build these artificial containers around data sets. We just don't know how to deploy that at scale. So to me, the answer lies. It's not the answer, but the answer is in the convergence between how we design scientific experiments and data science and how you manage data lakes, right? I mean, it's in there. It's in there somewhere. It just needs to be worked on.
The problem, I think, when you start talking about healthcare data in particular is right now, one of the big fears of sharing that data, even if it's considered to be, in air quotes, anonymized, is people's fear, rational or not, that whatever you do to anonymize my data is really not going to anonymize it to a level where somebody can't use it to deny me coverage.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And that's, I think, and you can legislate that out. Hey, look, pre-existing conditions, you have to deal with them, period. That law is one page long.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
Space between the last period and the signature block, right? Once you do that, now people are less reticent, I think, because now they feel they have some safety net against denial of service.
100% agree. And that's a lot of my argument about privacy is that we can agree that improving public health is a great thing. And it solves, that's a problem, right? We're massively, as a species, unhealthy at this point. And so improving that is a very laudable goal. And I think sometimes it's easy because of attention spans and news cycles to conflate sharing data with being denied coverage, because it happens, right?
Right.
In order to deal with that, you don't deal with the data. That's not the problem. The problem are the assholes that have decided a good system is denying people healthcare based on a condition. So deal with that problem as that problem and let the data be separate. I 100% agree with you.
Well, that's because, health insurance is not a not-for-profit company.
Well, okay. And now you can start asking questions, just like prison. Should we allow that as a social system, not socialist, social system, to be for profit? Should there be some things that are just not in that vertical?
Yes, and there's two things. When you start talking about the prisons and prison population and for-profit prisons, right? The concept of building buildings to lock people up just because we know there's going to be more people. I can't. It's back in the 90s, the legislation that started mandatory minimums.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That right there. I mean, I'm no constitutional authority by any stretch, but telling somebody that blanketly there's no, in every other instance, you commit murder, right? There's varying degrees, right? Mm-hmm. You have X amount of crack on you, you're going to jail for 2 years. You're in New York City, you fire a gun, you inappropriately have a firearm on you, you're going to jail for 2 years. And there's no arguing about it. And latitude in sentencing or lack thereof can drive a much larger population. Is that, were those laws passed, And this is where I go back to my fire suit analogy. Every senators and Congress people don't need dresses or suits or any formal wear. They just need to have fire suits on that have logos on them of who they've taken money from. And the bigger the logo, the more money they've taken. Right. So you can see why they're voting the way they're voting. Right. Cory Booker is so far in the bag for Big Pharma. It's crazy. Why? Because
he's in New Jersey.
Well, and he takes a crap load of money from Big Pharma.
Yeah.
Right? We've joked about this before. Do you think I think it was 2006, 2007, mid 2000s, that Arlen Specter, the senior senator from Pennsylvania at the time, in his 70s, battling brain cancer, wrote a multi-thousand-page omnibus communications bill? Or do you think Comcast in his district wrote it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Arlen. He's a good guy. He's really intelligent.
I'm not saying he's not smart. He's not everything else, right? But and then we take 20 minutes to look one of these bills over. We got to vote on it, right?
Oh, TK, you and your conspiracy theories.
Well, it's in general. It's not like you watch it on television every day of the week. If you can stomach watching the news, and I'm not telling you which channels to watch or not watch, pick one, you'll throw up no matter which one you watch, right? I'm baffled some days, right? We're not, and I think a lot of it's a 24-hour news cycle. You're not allowed to be deliberative anymore as an elected official, right? That you want to stick a microphone in your mouth, you're supposed to have an intelligent answer on everything,
right?
And we're largely employing C students. Right. I'm not talking about where they got educated, where they went to college. Right. I'm talking about the ramifications of what they do. Right. A congressman, your congressperson doesn't cost that much money. It probably costs about $1 per citizen a year.
Right.
In a congressional district. Right. It's what they do while they're there that gets expensive.
Yes.
Right.
Especially long term.
Right. And when over the years, we've got a system that has, in very few cases, and I'm talking what the population now believes. In very few cases, does the population believe that anybody that sits on Capitol Hill has their constituents' best interest in mind. Right? And that's a big problem. Right? I mean, one of the guys running for Congress down here, he said, and I think it's a great statement. He goes, "You may not like politics and you may not like politicians, but it's the system we have right now, so you should probably be engaged." Right. And more engagement. This is my belief across the board. The more engagement you personally have in the outcome of any situation in your domain. If you don't vote, I don't want to hear you complain. Right? Mm-hmm. You basically said, I'm going to abdicate any responsibility I have for putting somebody that's competent in a seat that represents me. If you just walk into your healthcare provider and say, "What do you got for me? Do it to me. Right? Give me a pill, give me this, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to live life the way I want." Any of those things along the way, you're not helping to push us forward. And when you start talking, saying, "Hey, privacy and how we think about it needs to demonstrably change," doing that requires people to be extremely proactive about their person and their being and taking responsibility for it. And that's hard. Right. And I'm not joking. Like when you see, and I hate to say it this way, it's more pronounced in women because women do a lot of things that are outwardly more visible for how they look and everything than men, right? Men jump out of bed, take a shower, 5 minutes, boom, and they're out the door. Right. If you see, it's very easy for somebody to go get new clothes, new makeup, a hairdo, nails done, rather than really take control of your health. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. How quickly can I look as okay as I'm going to look and feel good about myself for a very short period of time? Right? And change that discussion with everything in life. Like, what am I doing to be proactive to make my life much more livable? Mm-hmm. And along the way, be part of a coherent kind of humanity plan, right? That says, hey, we can't have everything, but how can we take care of the most people in any given moment and do it with as much empathy as possible?
Right. Well, and so it ties into a lot of big ideas where, I know you and I have talked about this before, and we've talked about it on the show, the three of us, this notion of there's something bigger than me. And what bigger thing is there than our species? And I take this very seriously, like this idea that it's really important to me that our species survives like a really long time.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like a really long time, almost infinitely long. And to do that, man, there's some seriously hard problems.
Go spend any time with people that are either chronically homeless or have mental illness. A lot of times that's the same group, right? Sure. But I mean, 100 years ago, I'd gone to paramedic school, and it's to me, like being a paramedic where you're at the front line of seeing people at their very worst, right? You walk into a home and there's a lady there. Her face is really flushed and everything like that. She hasn't been hit, but her face is really flushed. She's feeling like she's going to have a heart attack. And it's like you get her blood pressure. She's about ready to pop. You're like, ma'am, do you take blood pressure medication? Yeah, I gave my husband the money. He went out and he spent it on liquor or whatever, and then came home and was pissed and got her wrapped up because dinner wasn't ready, right? Yeah. And you see that side of it. More importantly, it's just, it bums me out to a level where I just want to sit in a chair and curl up. You walk up on a scene and there's a lady there that I thought was in her 60s. And I said, ma'am, what's the problem? And she's like, I hurt. And I'm like, well, what's your chief complaint? I go, where do you hurt? From the top of my head to the bottom of my feet.
Yep.
Start taking the information because she's largely using the ambulance as a taxi ride to the emergency room. Mm-hmm. Right? Which, by the way, jacks up everybody's premiums because it's the least efficient way to be seen. And rather than just being able to walk into a clinic somewhere and say, I don't feel well, and the system has done the right thing without turning this into socialized medicine, right? We still have a competent, coherent, super effective, forward-leaning healthcare system, but we've done it in a way that guarantees people get seen. I'm taking down the information, and her birthday is after mine. And that's the byproduct of people not seeing a physician on whatever periodicity we deem to be regular, so that they don't dovetail off, right?
Right.
And dental, and if you want to start it, dental's a big part of that, right? And how many insurance, that's on top of this, right? And dental insurance doesn't work the same way as health insurance, right? If you're going to get a discount, you're getting a percentage of, and everything's fungible, right?
Well, and all three of us wear glasses about vision.
But we're not talking holistically about the problems. And, everybody looks at emergency medicine or EMS services in general and says it's for car accidents and trauma victims and stuff like that. There's a good portion of it that are just abject, either poor people that have mental issues, homeless and everything like that they get to a point where, they've either got to be seen or they're not going to be seen, right? Because they're
right.
And that you don't have empathy and compassion to that. We can't be friends. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Dan?
I concur.
Oh man. You know what I've been wondering this whole time? You were talking about the dude you met that introduced you to Highland single malt Scotch, and you made a reference to a movie, and I was thinking the whole time, I wonder if you pulled out a sword and fought him, and that's why you're here.
No. Look, I'm getting it from the other end. I'm waiting for Dan for those jokes all the time. No,
hey man, I got to do my part.
No, I dig it.
You guys got any big plans for today?
Yeah, TK didn't use a sword. He literally ripped the guy's head off to be there.
Oh, Daniel.
Oh, Lord. You guys got any big plans for today?
I do not.
I'm going shooting.
Oh, right on, man.
Cool.
Yeah, taking the little guy. He wants to go shooting, so I'm like, all right, great. We'll bring out the charging rhino.
Pistols or long guns?
Pistols.
Cool.
Yeah, the place where I go doesn't have the certification to do long guns yet. They're still waiting on all that. But
are you going to teach him how to duel?
No.
Do you go to indoor or outdoor range?
Indoor.
Yeah. Dan's got. He is shooting a gun, but he wants to be civilized while he's doing it.
Yeah.
I've not done a lot. I've done a couple small indoor. You can shoot like a 22 long rifle and pistol at, and that's about it. But growing up in Ohio, you could just walk out into the woods and find a bank to shoot into, and you can shoot whatever the fuck you wanted.
I'm sure that's probably not the same today.
Probably not. Yeah. Probably not. Yeah. I mean, you could probably go do it. It's a question of how fast are the cops showing up because somebody calls because they hear shots.
One of the coolest ranges I've ever seen in my life was somebody had a big piece of property and it was relatively flat. So they just got a big bucket loader and they basically dug like a 6-8 foot hole, like you're digging for a swimming pool with a ramp, like kind of, ramp it down. And then they just lined the inside with the sides of it with concrete, put a concrete wall, and then put a backstop up in front of it. And they solved the problem by basically jumping in a hole so the rounds can't go anywhere crazy. And the way they had the backstop, it was a really intuitive way that they had the backstopping done to capture a round if it was a straight round, but it wouldn't come back on you. And a lot of how you angle the steel. So if I'm going to angle the steel, those blast fractures are going to go to a certain place, and then there was an awning with a blast net and everything like that. And I thought, like, man, somebody was thinking that day.
Yeah, exactly.
One of these days off the air, I'm going to tell you about the coolest indoor range I ever went to, but I can't because I'll out somebody, and they'll probably have the range taken away because of where they live these days.
The Chiappa charging rhino pistol, revolver. Technically, I love this gun. It's like it's almost impossible to not hit what you're aiming because the chamber is on the bottom and then it's got reinforcement on the top, and it's a 9mm revolver, which is just interesting as well. What's that?
I have to check that out.
Yeah, it's about 6 inches, I think is what the barrel length is.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's fun to shoot.
I'll tell you, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this. Maybe we'll end here. Part of what's really mystified me, and it mystifies me why it mystifies me, but it legitimately mystifies me, is there's been certain things that I've wanted to go to the store to get that they're just like gone. So like last weekend, I took my daughter to Dick's Sporting Goods to look at bows and arrows because we're thinking about getting some nice recurve bows just to shoot targets in the lawn, right? They're not only sold out, they don't know when they're ever going to get them again, and they've completely replaced that part of the store with other stock that they have. And so I scratched my head. I'm like, why the fuck would you sell out of bows and arrows and everything?
Festival coming up in your area?
Dude, I don't know. And so and of course, I'm in the South, so I don't know how other parts of the country are, but I bet it's a little different. I mean, you can go to pretty much any store and buy a gun here. And they have a couple shotguns and that's it. Everything else is gone.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if people are worried about the apocalypse or if people are just let's spend time. I don't know. I can't.
I went to, and this is an anomaly of having not had to buy ammunition most of my adult life, that I went to one of the local gun stores and I was getting some 9mm rounds or whatever. And it was shortly on the heels of some politician standing up talking about the gun laws they're going to enact, right?
Yeah.
And the place was packed, and I walked in, and the owner of the gun store was like, I wish that guy would be up on television talking every day of the week. He goes, because every time he opens his mouth, everybody comes here and buys everything off the shelves, right?
Right.
And that's the bigger issue.
Well, it's interesting. Maybe we're not going to end because this is something else I've been thinking about. So just yesterday and this morning, the news reported again about, I think in particular, it's Lindsey Graham driving the bill to introduce backdoors into all software. And so the way that reads, I immediately think to myself, well, wait, dude, I don't know how many programs I personally write a semester, but I can measure how many I have my students write. So am I going to be legally, let's assume this passes, it's worst case scenario. Am I going to be legally compelled to have my students write backdoors into a Hello World program? What?
Yeah.
It's just, that tells you how patently nonsensical it is.
Can we just end here then because this is I'm going to go drink some chamomile tea and try to calm down because when we start talking about this, I'm like,
hey, maybe, dude, that's a perfect topic for next week then. We have plenty of time to prepare.
Yeah. Let's just say this. What's the average age of a U.S. senator and how much time have they spent even doing email?
Let's put it this way. They make you look young.
Exactly. That's not an easy task some days, my friend.
Well, okay, so we'll end with this because maybe we will talk about this next week. But I'll leave you with this thought. Dan, I'll quote your and I favorite leader. This presupposes that there's not already backdoors.
Pretty sure that's not our favorite leader, but
that's a rational thought, though, right?
Yeah, sure. Well,
I mean, that's kind of what it's kind of what NSA did with RSA back in the day, right? With their random number generator, purposely causing flaws, pay them off a bunch of money.
I don't know.
Yeah,
that cost them almost zero market share when that came out, right? It's the same
like
reason,
nothing.
Same reason Target didn't fix all their problems afterwards. They're like, we'll just change everything on a regular occurrence and we'll fix it. Nobody really cares anyway.
Yeah. Thanks for the free marketing, everybody.
Yeah. So speaking of the shooting aspect, TK, are you familiar with the guys down at Palmetto State Armory?
No.
Okay.
Obviously, they're in South Carolina.
They are in South Carolina. Hey, you seem to know someone in a lot of different other areas.
I just don't know anybody there. I thought you were talking about some other gun ranges.
Because they make some what appears to be pretty decently rated long guns, and they'll sell them to you in a kit, so that way you learn how to put it together.
It's called the 80% upper rule.
Yeah. So
I think that'll be people look at that as a loophole. I don't. People look at that as a loophole in the system to get what people call assault rifles, which again,
well, no, they don't send. They won't send it direct to me. I still have to have it sent.
No, it'll get sent to an FFL.
Right, and I still have to go through the whole.
Right,
I've already had it.
You can configure it, and everything's different than if you buy the whole gun.
Yeah.
Right. That thing, there's a lot of that out there.
All right, so real quick, let me just this. You saw my reaction to something, right? So, being in South Carolina, I'm interested in how they're going to fit into my empire eventually of the unified territories of Carolina.
Just like the Dakotas.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or the Virginias. So, I've looked at firearms here and there, not only because I've shot guns and I like weapons, but, my daughter has an interest in hunting and all this stuff. But I've never, ever once, never, ever looked at, you called it Palmetto, Palmetto State Armory, correct?
Yeah.
Never once I've ever looked at that. I type PAL into my Google search bar and Palmetto State Armory shows right up at the top.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying.
I was reading about him in some.
I'm not saying what I'm saying.
Yeah. When I was, before I started my MBA, I was going to start, really doing 3 guns. So at first I wanted to get good at pistol because that seemed to be the hardest aspect to do. And then, all right, next, then I was going to go to the rifle. And I read about these guys on one of the, basically 3-gun, sites that were out there. And like, look, if you want a decent gun that you can put some mods on, because you really want to spend your money, if you're going to go the AR route, you want to be able to spend your money on the sites.
Yeah.
So go to this route and spend your money here because you're gonna score well.
Dan, rather than a guy named John Shaw. He was a 3-gun champion, late 70s, early 80s. He won on the shotgun. He was so much better on the shotgun. He was above average on the pistol and the long gun, but he was he realized he worked on his craft. He's like, the thing I can get better at that nobody else can is a shotgun. But what it did was when you go to a trap house, you can turn around and face the range and have the traps come at you. We'd be down there shooting at his school, and guys would miss with a shotgun. And he'd be like, dude, it's not that hard. He's like, pull. And when he says pull, he pulls out a pistol and shoots the clay pigeon. Like, it made him better working that with the finesse you have to have with a shotgun.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why right now I'm just basically practicing for IDPA.
Cool.
But at some point I'll go back to the 3-gun route when I leave the state of New York, when it makes it easier for me to get firearms.
This has been a good week because now we have a topic for next week.
That's right. I like that. Perfect segue into the topic. Denouement. Climax.
Oh, yeah, well, we're out. All right. Now that we've used denouement, I have to go.
Yeah.
See that? CMA, the English degree came in handy.
I like it. Yeah. All right, my friends. I will see you next week.
Have a good one, everybody. Take care. Cheers.
Peace.
Bye-bye.